The VCT regular season stage 1 starts this weekend, and it's time to make a list of who I think are the top 10 players in the VCT Americas League. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today I have looked through all players in the VCT Americas League, and we're going to be ordering my picks for the top 10. Now this list is before stage 1 of the regular season, so I'll probably be doing a updated version of this once we know which teams are going to Shanghai, and then we can maybe do top 10 players in the world going into that tournament as well, but for now we're focusing on Americas. So starting off the list, we have a player from Evil Geniuses, and that is Jogma. So Jogma so far has really impressed me with what he's been able to do for this Evil Geniuses squad so far. It is a small sample size. They've only played 2 matches, one against G2, one against Loud, but they did perform pretty well in both of those matches. And while with the roster they have, I still have questions about how far this roster can truly go, even with really good coaching from Potter. I definitely think if they're going to go anywhere, it's going to be on the back of Jogma. This man is just insane. He's super aggressive. He's one of the best raised players in the entire world. And in previous videos when talking about that former EG roster, I did kind of say that there was an argument to be made about Jogma being the worst player on that Evil Geniuses roster last year, even though he wasn't bad. It's just when you look at just how stacked that roster is, there has to be a player that is the worst, and I did kind of think it was Jogma, but honestly, just seeing what he's done without that roster, this man's insane, so I definitely retract that statement. Moving on to number 9, we have a player from the team Loud, and that player is their IGL in Sadak. So Sadak is an interesting one. Now, how I'm doing this list is not just based off of like individual skill. I know some people are going to put their top 10 like that, but my list is my personal list for a combination of individual skill and impact on their team, what kind of value they bring to the server, and Sadak, I think, does a lot of things very well. He's an extremely good IGL who so far has been able to get a lot out of this Loud squad that is without the best player they had last year. So while I don't know if Loud are going to be able to win an international tournament, they had an okay performance at Madrid. They were only able to beat Chinese teams, so it's not really much to go off of, but I do think that Sadak has been able to get a lot out of this roster and make other players on his team look very good. So while his individual performance is up and down, he has had some really good maps so far this year. He has been able to have some very stellar performances that kind of just come out of nowhere. So he's a big moments kind of player is how I see him. Moving on to number 8, we have a player from Sentinels. For Sentinels, players that shows up, not the last, we have Zelsis. Now, if you asked me last year about my top 10 players, I probably wouldn't have Zelsis anywhere near the top 10. I definitely thought he was a good player that would have value on any team just because of the way that he just brings his team together. But he did say during Madrid that he wanted to play Paper X specifically because he wanted to prove that he was better at being a flex player than Forsaken. They did in fact beat Paper X, so if he wants to claim that he has the title of best flex player in the world, he can absolutely make himself an argument for that. Zelsis is able to be a really good vibes guy on his team while having some really stellar performances and being able to play whatever role he's needed. We've seen him on a number of different agents so far this year, and he hasn't looked bad on any of them. So while last year probably wouldn't have him in the top 10, he has put himself, in my opinion, number 8, and there is an argument that he could be higher, but there are some really good players on this team, so somebody has to be lower. Moving on, we have a player from Energy who actually plays a pretty similar role to Zelsis, just maybe in a different way. We have Victor. So Victor has played a lot of different roles during his time on both the Optic roster and Energy. We've seen him on Duelist playing Raze and Neon, but this year he is playing some Sentinel. We've seen him on Cypher a lot this year, and he doesn't look like he is struggling at all on that role. I've always been very high on Victor. He's one of my favorite players. Him and Crashies are one of the best duos in Valorant. It is unfortunate that we couldn't see him at Madrid. That whole Energy roster is supremely talented, but they ran into the team that ended up winning Madrid, so I really don't take anything from the Energy roster for not making Madrid. But Victor didn't look like he skipped a beat from the end of last year. I'm very glad that he's still looking good, and I think he's going to continue to be probably the best flex player in the Americas. While I just talked about Zelsis potentially being the best in the world at flex, I think Zelsis definitely has a bit of a way to go. I know he just won Madrid, but, you know, does he stay that way throughout the season? While I think Victor has been a bit more consistent throughout his whole career. So we'll see if these players end up swapping places by the end of stage 1, but right now I would have Victor above Zelsis at number 7. Moving on, we have our second IGL on the list from Sentinels, John QT. John QT might be the player that I've been most impressed with this year. Sentinels pick him up with the belief that he can be a fragging IGL. When they scrimmed with a bunch of players that they were trying to decide on who to bring on, John QT was the best in terms of being able to frag and his IGLing abilities. And I don't know how sustainable this early success will be for Sentinels. There will be teams that are going to try to learn Sentinels as the year goes along. So there is a chance that they end up struggling. I'm not saying I think that's going to happen. I do think they're going to be, at the very least, a top 3 team in the world throughout the entire year. And I think that John QT is going to be one of the main reasons why. This man is insane. He's really good in the clutch. He's really good on Cypher. You can play him on different roles and he won't look out of place. And his calling has proven to be top tier in the entire world. He's able to adapt on the fly, and even when Sentinels are down, they just don't quit. They're able to have some insane comebacks, and I think that resilience that they've shown throughout the season so far is a lot to do with John QT and the confidence that he has put in this team since he joined the roster. So I think just overall value and skill, John QT is my pick for number 6. I kind of wanted to have him in the top 5, but again, there's just so many good players on this list. It is very hard to decide. This was a hard list to order. Moving on to number 5, we have another player from Sentinels, and that is TenZ, Return of the King. So TenZ for the past 2 seasons has really struggled. If TenZ wasn't who he is, I think we probably would have seen him gone from this roster after the end of last season. He did really struggle last season. 2022 wasn't a great year for him either, and he's one of those players that has been given chances that other players just don't get. And for Sentinels, it's worked out supremely well. My thing with TenZ has always been he doesn't seem like a guy that thrives under pressure. While he was very good in 2021 with that Sentinels roster, that one Rankovic, he wasn't the only person on that team that was firing on all cylinders. He was the best player on the team, but he wasn't alone in his individual ability. Versus in 2022, where if the team wasn't doing well, everyone was blaming TenZ for it. Same with 2023. There were many calls for Sentinels to drop this player, to drop TenZ and get someone else in. Get someone else on the duel list, everybody said. Well, they did it, they just didn't drop TenZ. I did have my concerns when I heard that TenZ was switching to a controller role in Omen, but it has paid off so well for Sentinels so far this season, and he just looks absolutely incredible. The pressure is completely off him now. He's playing a role that isn't known to be getting a lot of kills, yet he's still getting a lot of kills in every single map. Some struggling here and there, obviously, but he's consistently looking top of his class, while being very good in that controller role. He's also really good on KO. He's also really good on Yoru, and he's played a bit of Gecko so far. So we're seeing that thing that people criticized TenZ so much for in previous years, that, oh, he's not flexible at all, he can only play Jet, and even on Jet he's not very good. So now he's a flexible player, he's looking fantastic on every single role, and I think he has made his way back into the top 5 for top players in VCT Americas. It might be a little bit too high for him at this moment, but I think with just how he's performed and his chemistry with Zekken, I do think he deserves to be in the top 5 on this list. Moving on to number 4 on our list, another player from Energy, and that is Demon 1. So going into the season, many people probably would have had Demon 1 at the top of every list when it comes to not only best players in Americas, but also best players in the world, as he so claimed when Evil Geniuses won champions. So far on Energy, he still looks very good. The team hasn't played a lot of matches. They've only played 3 so far. In that game against Sentinels, they definitely shut down Demon 1 very effectively. So you could see that as Demon 1 is regressing, but I just felt like it's too small of a sample size so far to drop him out of the top 5. He's still that guy. He's still Demon 1. I think he just needs to kind of find that extra edge that he had last year. Last year, he was just trying to prove that he was the best player in the world the entire time he was in the server. He proved it, and now he has to find that extra step where players that don't have something to prove can maybe just slack off a little. It's not something that I think he's doing, at least not consciously, and I don't think we've really seen that because, again, he has looked good, but it is a thing about competitive mindset. This can happen to players. We saw it with Sentinels in 2021. As soon as they won, they were like, well, everybody else has to prove that they're as good as us. We're the best. What do we have to prove? And then they got smacked time and time and time again. And the current Sentinels roster, I don't really see them doing that, mainly because hopefully they learn from that. So Demon 1, again, I'm not saying that this is what he's doing, but it could potentially be a thing. If he already sees himself as the best in the world, I think he has to make sure that he does his best to prove that he can stay the best player in the world, because champions fall. That's how it goes. But I think he is still supremely talented, and I think he still is at least top 4 in my opinion. We'll see if this changes. So now we have our top 3. Starting off with number 3, we have a player from Loud, and that is less. So while a lot of the early success that Loud have found I think can be attributed to Static and the coaching staff being very creative with their character comps, being able to catch teams off guard, I think one of the main reasons why it's working is that Les is still on the team. Les is fantastic on that Viper role. He has been proven that he can be very effective both in the kills department and just overall value as a Viper. He's very good at that smokes role, and I just think he's very, very good right now. I am concerned about Loud's long-term success, but if they do anything this season, Les is going to be the front runner. Moving on to number 2, we have a player from Leviathan, and it is a former Loud player. This is Aspas. So Leviathan had a disappointing start. They built this super team in the offseason, and they just weren't able to get past Loud or Sentinels, two teams that are very good. In terms of overall roster construction, I don't love the way that Leviathan is built, but Aspas is a fantastic pickup for them. And again, while Leviathan didn't go far, Aspas individually looked fantastic at that kickoff event. He didn't look like he skipped a beat. He might be able to play more characters on this roster than he did on Loud. We've already seen him playing a bit of Reyna, so we'll see how flexible his character pool becomes this year. But overall, if Leviathan are going to do anything this season, they might need to just get carried by Aspas, because this man is so talented. He can just dominate any battlefield. Last year, he was among the best in kills and kill death ratio, and that is important for his role. And he's showing so far that he doesn't need to be on Loud to look like potentially the best player in the world. I just don't know if this team gets him there to really have that be the spotlight. But I don't think Aspas has skipped a beat. He's still very good. There's an argument for him to be number 1, but we have somebody else there. Which brings us to a person that I don't think you should be surprised is at number 1, a Sentinels player by the name of Zekken. Zekken has looked incredible so far this season. I have been so impressed with him. Last season, I felt like he wasn't getting enough attention for how good he was because Sentinels were really bad. But even on a bad team last year, he had very good stats and he was their best player. So I was very excited to see what he was going to do this year, especially being that main duelist on Sentinels now. And so far, the returns are absolutely insane. This man is just destroying everybody. He was the best player at kickoff. He was the best player at Madrid. He might be the best Raze in the world right now. Jhin is in shambles right now. I kind of feel like his Raze is a bit better than his Jet. It just seems like he understands Raze's kit just so well. He knows how to use those satchels in just super impressive ways. And it seems like every time he dies, he gets a trade. So he is bringing so much value to that Sentinels roster. He's making Kaplan and John QT's job quite easier than it would be without him. So I do think right now he's the best player in the VCT Americas. Is he the best player in the world? I think right now, probably. After one international tournament, it is kind of hard to call, but I think Zekken is still going to be in that contention for number 1 in the world when we get to Shanghai. So this is my list for top 10 players in VCT Americas. This is of course all just my opinion. You can agree, you can disagree, that's all cool. If you're gonna comment and disagree with me, all I ask is that you be nice. This is all just opinion. I understand there's going to be a lot of different lists, so let me know what your list is. But anyway, please click like if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.